Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Sober Social. In this video, we're going to be discussing the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind, meaning that weird, nebulous, mystical sounding topic that none of us seem to feel like we understand. It's much simpler than you might expect, and that's why in this video I'm going to break it down, simplify it, and make it I want you to feel like you have a good understanding of what it is and what it means and what it can do for you and what it is supposed to be doing for you. And that way it's not this weird nebulous concept that you feel like you don't fully understand. It's just a simple component of your intelligence that you now understand how to operate. And so in this video we're going to go into 3 sections. The first section being, what is exactly the objective of our subconscious mind when it comes to applying that subconscious intelligence to making something like cold approaching easy and fun. In the second section, we're going to go into a bit of an owner's manual, how to operate the subconscious in the best way possible so that we no longer feed it the incorrect outputs, making its progress and helping us hindered. And then of course also understanding what the correct inputs are and how to input those into the system. And then finally, we'll wrap up with the last section going into the most common mistakes for all of us. We all experience at different times of our lives trying to operate the subconscious in one way or another, making it so that it is operating, but it's operating at less than optimal performance. So without further ado, let's crack right in. The entire purpose of our subconscious mind and the reason that we're learning how to operate it in the most efficient and effective way possible is automation. We want something like cold approaching to become as effortless and fun, and really fun is more of an added bonus, but as effortless and automatic as something like tying our shoes or driving a car. And in order to get there are 3 basic steps that you need to understand. First, we envision very clearly the goal that we wish for our subconscious to ultimately take over. Second, we offer the correct inputs to our subconscious so that it may begin advancing towards the attainment of that goal. And finally, we trust that the natural mechanics of the subconscious will automatically adjust so that the output that it produces adjusts and becomes closer to that goal on its own. So we set a clear goal, we offer the correct inputs, and then we trust that the outputs will adjust themselves. The subconscious mind is like a machine. It begins with a goal. Once we've established a very clear goal, a vision that we want our subconscious to ultimately take over, the very first correct input that we have to offer the subconscious mind is action. Advancement towards the realization of that ultimate goal. Now, that's not to say that conscious study like you're doing right now is not valuable, but it's only valuable to a certain threshold, and beyond that, the subconscious mind cannot benefit. It cannot learn. So once we begin to take action, 2 very beautiful things begin to happen. First, the subconscious mind begins to receive feedback and process that feedback. And the next thing that happens is, according to that feedback that it receives, it adjusts the course of forward action. So we begin with a goal, we begin taking action, and then simultaneous to that action, the subconscious receives feedback, processes the feedback, and naturally, automatically adjusts the course of forward action. So it's not that we take action and then we receive feedback and then we adjust the course of forward action. This is a simultaneous process. Action entails that we are simultaneously also receiving and processing feedback and adjusting the course of forward action accordingly. Now, a very important caveat to understand here is that the subconscious mind, like I said, it's a machine, or like a machine, and with that, it is impartial. It doesn't care if you input positive interpretations of events or negative interpretations of events. It doesn't care if you have positive anticipations or negative anticipations or no anticipations at all. It will, according to the input that you feed it, that being, of course, the thoughts, the emotions, interpretations of experiences, and so forth, it will adjust the course of forward action based on what you feed it. Think about it like this. Let's imagine as a metaphor that our subconscious mind is like a torpedo. So, that's not what I meant to do. We begin with the goal for the torpedo. I'm just going to put that over here. Whatever the goal is for a torpedo, it might be a boat, might be a fish, I don't know. Whatever, we have the goal. Like I said, the very first step that we have to offer to the subconscious in order for it to begin the attainment of that goal is forward action. After perhaps some conscious study, that is very valuable to a certain degree, but it's only when we begin taking action that we begin training the subconscious mind to embody the goal that we've envisioned for it. So we begin taking forward action. Okay, that's the first step. Now inevitably, because your subconscious mind is new to the goal, it could be tying your shoes or it could be cold approaching or something else, it inevitably will stray off course. And this could be the example of getting rejected, and of course that's not necessarily a mistake on your part. Being that this is a social game that we're playing and therefore other people's decisions are at play, it's not necessarily a mistake on your part. It could just be that she's in a bad mood or whatever, but it's best to just sort of assume that most of the time, if something bad happens, if we turn a girl off and we come across as creepy or weird or whatever it is, it's because our subconscious is learning and adapting. So it strays from course. And what the ideal case is for it to simply adjust. It adjusts back to get closer on course. But maybe it strays again. Maybe you get a flaky number, or whatever other example. But after straying for some time, it adjusts again. And what will happen is these adjustments will become less and less off course. And ultimately, if you stick with it, you will ultimately realize that goal that you have envisioned for the subconscious. So let's wrap up now with some common mistakes when using and training the subconscious mind. By far, the greatest mistake that we can fall into is inaction. Not actually taking the first step towards the attainment of whatever goal we've envisioned for ourselves. And I know it's the hardest step, both on the longer scale picture and the short scale picture, meaning that taking the step into actually, stepping into the cold approach journey as a whole, and each and every time you go out, the very first approach is always the most difficult. I understand that, but if you never take the plunge, all of this conscious study that you're doing, as valuable as it is, it's worthless. It's absolutely worthless. Your subconscious cannot benefit, and that is why you have to take this step. So that is the most important one, but there are other mistakes as well that are also very common. The first one I'm going to mention here is that we input, I said the subconscious is a machine, and it works by, we feed it inputs, and then accordingly it outputs some sort of reaction to the inputs. And what our mistake is here is that we feed it with the wrong inputs. And what this is sourced from, at least in my opinion, and I mentioned this in the last video about self-sabotage, my opinion is that the reason that we do this is that we have, like I mentioned in that video, the intense desire to succeed, but we also have the debilitating fear of failure. And so the desire to succeed drives us forward, it pushes us to take action, but the debilitating fear of failure stifles us back. And so we have these conflicting motivations, and that conflict makes it so that we have the clear goal, ideally, we have some sort of goal that we've envisioned for the subconscious to take over, but with that goal, the inputs that we're putting into our subconscious to get there might not be in line with it. For example, if our goal is to become better at cold approaching or better at making people laugh and have fun or whatever it is, and our inputs are worrying about all of the ways that it could go wrong, worrying whether they'll like you, worrying whether they'll approve, I don't know, like whatever else there is, worrying about the 10,000 scenarios that could go wrong, that clashing is going to make it so that we have divided intent, and that, of course, as we know, leads to self-sabotage, among other things that are just very, very bad. So that is another mistake, the incorrect inputs into the subconscious mechanism. Now the final one, and this is very related to that wrong input, and that is just, I'm making this separate note because I feel it's important to mention this, and that is the incorrect, or just like unhelpful. You know, you can make very rational arguments for saying that unhelpful interpretations of events are accurate, but helpful is another way of, you know, it's like a whole nother question. Whether it's helpful is what we really are concerned with, and whether they're helpful or not depends on you know, and your interpretation of them being not necessarily accurate, like I said, but helpful. So again, an example of this could be, let's say you're rejected. Your interpretation could be, I'm a piece of shit, I don't deserve this success, I'm never gonna make it, this is too hard, blah, 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 blah. But on the other hand, you might also interpret it like this. Let's say, oh, she was just in a bad mood. It's just like, you know, maybe my first set of the night. I'm learning, my subconscious is molding itself over time, I'm getting better, and I'm not even focused on the rejection, I'm focused on all of the times it went well. That is the ideal. Interpret the bad even, or, you know, the bad, the unfavorable or whatever, as good, and do it in a way like that's consistent and empowering, and that way, you know, you're not falling into this mistake of interpreting certain events as, you know, whatever discourages the subconscious from continuing to move forward, right? Because like we already mentioned, the whole purpose of straying off course, or the whole objective of the subconscious is one that when that happens, it adjusts the course of forward action. It does not mean necessarily, and usually it doesn't, to stop the course of forward action altogether. You may have noticed that all of these mistakes have one very core problem in common, and that is fear. Fear of making mistakes, fear of not being good, fear of embarrassing ourselves, fear of criticism, and so forth. When we don't take action ourselves, when we don't take action at all, it's because we're afraid of messing up, it's because we're afraid of getting criticized and all of that stuff. If we're putting in the wrong inputs into the subconscious, or we're misinterpreting events in a way that's unhelpful and it discourages us, it's because we're afraid that it might not work. We're afraid of not actually progressing. We don't have faith in our ability, and our subconscious's ability, to progress over time upward through the learning curve. And so if there is one lesson that I want you to take away from this video, I want it to be this. Success is about failing more, not less. So embrace it. Embrace your mistakes. Embrace stumbling up the learning curve and embarrassing yourself along the way. Have fun with it, because the more you fail, the more you make mistakes, the more you're willing to embrace that discomfort, the faster you're going to learn and grow rich. If you enjoyed the video, guys, don't forget to like it and consider subscribing. Thank you, and I will see you next week.